would you like to get us started and introduce? I know this is usually Danny handles the Ask the Expert, but I don't get to see you that often, or it's in passing that I was just like, can I have a conversation with her on this topic?
Oh, sure. Yeah, thank you so much. Well, welcome everyone. Happy Indigenous Peoples Day. My name is Danny. I also go by Chino. I am the Community Outreach Coordinator for the Social Impact Center. And thank you again for joining us in our ongoing series, Ask an Expert. This month, we are featuring Eunisses Hernandez, who is a political advocate, person who loves Indigenous culture, and is an expert on the political measures that we are seeing in our upcoming election, specifically Measure J. And everyone, Felicia Carbajal is the CEO of the Social Impact Center.
Good morning, everyone. I'm I feel so excited. Like, I don't know about everyone else, but it's just like, how do you say good morning, warriors? Good morning. Before we get going, I want to pay a little bit of respect and acknowledge and honor that we're on the sacred land of the Tongva people, and make sure that we give the utmost respect for local tribes and all Indigenous people that live in this area. We're grateful for the people who fought and who continue to fight long and hard to dismantle the white supremacy that we see exists. And we recognize the reclamation of this day. We honor this land and her people every day. If you're like me, we want to make sure that folks know that this is stolen land and that we're guests. And as honored guests, we're going to do the best that we can for her. Without further ado, because I know lots of folks are excited about this election year in particular, I've had the honor and privilege to know Eunisses for about 5 years now. Before, gosh, it just makes me feel old every time I recollect these things. But when she was kicking ass with Drug Policy Alliance and going there with this intention of raising and highlighting criminal justice reform, not just marijuana legalization. And she won a place in my heart because of that, because I didn't see a capitalistic centering on the conversation of how we were going to shift the legalization of marijuana into the cannabis industry in a way that didn't honor our people. So I'm forever grateful for her holding us to task, and making sure that first and foremost that people, all of us, people deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. She's also one of the co-chairs of Measure J. Will you tell us a little bit more about the proposition, and maybe also include what a proposition is? I feel as though the majority of the folks that are here with us right now know, but for folks who are going to just watch later, who don't know what a proposition is, do you mind sharing?
Sure. So a proposition is pretty much a law that gets put on the ballot in California. That's at the state level, right? So you have Proposition 15, 22, 25. And then you have local ballot measures, such as the one that we're going to talk about, Measure J. And then you have like city charters, right, that are at the city level, or city measures that pass. So it's these different ways that, policy is passed through the voters. And just to highlight though, not all states have ballot measure processes. Like New York, there's no ballot measures. It's all the laws have to pass through the legislative processes. So in California, there is that leeway where we can pass policy and laws through the legislative process, but also put it in front of the voters for them to decide. And Measure J So Measure J is unlike any law that is, or any policy that's being passed in the country right now. It is a local LA County ballot measure, meaning that LA County residents will, and voters will have an opportunity to vote for it in November, and actually now, because folks should have been receiving their home ballots. And what it does is that it moves 10%. Okay, this is the boring part, right? But I'm gonna go as fast as possible. But it's like, it moves 10% of money that's in this bucket of funds where, you know, when you pay your property taxes, if you own property here, or when you buy things locally, all those are locally generated tax dollars that go into this huge bucket. In LA County, it's $8.8 billion, which is larger than most city budgets in California, right? Like, this is one of the biggest buckets that we have. It's just a little part of the $1 billion budget that is the LA County budget whole, right? And so 10% of the 8.8 billion would be moved into two buckets. One is community investment. So that looks like youth programs. It looks like real jobs, like with sustainable living wages and union opportunities that actually will go to building out the infrastructure of the decentralized system of care that we want, like hospitals and, you know, mental health centers. It will also go to support small businesses that are suffering because of COVID-19 and other issues, maybe damage to their business, like this could support them. And also housing support, like housing vouchers and jobs to actually build the capital infrastructure of housing projects and homes. Also, it goes into a second bucket, which is alternatives to incarceration. And this is the one that's most nearest and dearest to me, because we in LA County have spent, you know, several years trying to stop its in LA County's $3.5 billion jail plan. As you all saw and supported, Felicia, last year, we stopped the women's jail that they wanted to build in Lancaster, and we stopped the mental health jail that they wanted to build in Chinatown and downtown. And so we also, at the same time, put together a report called the Care First Jails Last Report. But for us, you know, communities like Care First Jails Never, I just want to highlight that. But this report has over 115 recommendations that talk about how to keep our people out of the jails, how to keep our people out of the ER, and how to keep law enforcement away from our people. And so this is really the golden standard for what other, you know, places and jurisdictions across the country should do on trying to like keep our people safe away from the carceral system and create safety valves to get them out once they're in. But I'm getting into the details, right? So let me go back. It invests into this bucket of alternatives to incarceration that looks like community-based pretrial services. In LA County, pre-COVID, over 7,000 people were in our jails pre-trial, simply because they couldn't pay to get out and because of current existing pretrial policies. That's over 7,000 people, right? That's a lot of people. And after COVID, now during COVID, we're still seeing that up to 60% of the LA County jail population, which is about 14,000 right now, is there pretrial. So when we talk about the need for community-based pretrial services, the need is there, and Measure J funds ATI. It also funds jobs and reentry support and mental health services. And again, the actual building and capital infrastructure of mental health services, of behavioral health services. And that's just a long way to say that up to 500 million, up to $1 billion could be invested in our communities through Measure J. There's a couple of caveats. None of the money can go to or go through law enforcement agencies or the traditional system of injustice. So the judges can't get it, the prosecutors can't get it, which is very important to us because we've seen money come from the state. We've seen money come through other propositions that are meant for social, like health services, and end up going through these, you know, probation departments, prosecutors' offices to deliver services, which is completely like antithetical. And so we want to, and sometimes though it gets stuck up there and they never even spend it on the things that they're intended for. So we want to make sure none of this 500 million up to $1 billion could be used by them. So it could only go to community and the health departments and, you know, job employment services. That's just a long way to explain Measure J, but you know, it lasts forever. It changes the county constitution, so it outlives us, it outlives the board of supervisors, and it outlives, most importantly, this political moment that we're in, right? Because right now we're seeing like weekly videos of people getting killed by police officers. We're hearing weekly stories of people getting killed by law enforcement when they're calling for help, especially for like mental health crises. We're seeing places across the country where they're asking to defund the police, but no measure or policy is permanent that has been talked about. Measure J is permanent. It's the first time we're ever going to see an investment like this in our communities. And yeah, that's Measure J. Sorry for the long-winded answer.
No. The answer was appropriate. I'm so grateful for you and all of the work and all of the others that have put in so many countless hours to dream. Like, you've made some magic happen. The ancestors definitely have to be proud of the fact that folks are thinking so outside of the box to make this, especially the city of Los Angeles, that has incarcerated so many people. I know you get thanked a lot, but I hope that that means that you are doing things for you as well in these moments. You know, you had brought up before everybody had came in that the campaign's under attack. Can you share with folks what's it under attack and what some of the folks can do? Because there's other folks here who I know a few have, like, I've shared with them job opportunities with the campaign to just, you know, get some experience under their belt with just making telephone calls. And I know I see a couple that I know they're like, oh yeah, we'll call in, we definitely want to apply. But there's other folks here who are, you know, who have big giant platforms where they can also share. Can you tell us a little bit more about who's attacking? We already know why, and what other folks can do to support.
Sure. So I had mentioned earlier that the Sheriff's Association, a quote unquote, you know how they talk about unions, like these are the unions. So these are the associations that represent the Sheriff's Department here in LA County. They have paid over $2.5 million. They have bought $2.5 million in TV ads against Measure J. And honestly, you know, we could talk about it. Like, they know that the things that are outside of our jail, such as the programs being delivered by the Office of Diversion and Reentry in LA County, are really helping people. Like, they're diverting people with serious mental health needs, with often like serious cases, out of the jails. They're seeing way better success rates than people coming out of the jails themselves. So they know that they're under threat. They also know that our campaign has been powerful. Otherwise, they wouldn't have spent nearly $3 million in TV ads against us. So we are a people-driven campaign. You know, these demands are not new. We've been demanding housing, good jobs, access to healthcare for decades, right? This is not new. But this is the opportunity where we've developed enough political power and able to achieve something which has never been done before, and get a ballot on in 3 weeks on the measure through the Board of Supervisors. But this moment calls for it. Our ancestors have been calling for this, and we're gonna make it happen. Some ways to plug in is, I mean, if I could just take a step back and say, you know, most folks who have been working on propositions, like the ones you're seeing on TV, Prop 15, Prop 17, like, folks have been working on this stuff for years, writing the ballot language measure, going it through legal processes, like doing polling. Like, this stuff takes years. We did this in 3 weeks, right? We got it officially on the ballot August 4th. That's, you know, less than a couple of months ago. And I just really want to put that, because time is not our friend. We have to tell as many people as possible Measure J. That's the first thing. We have a social media toolkit that we update weekly. If you have a platform, please share it. Let as many people know to vote yes. We have, like, you know, we're people driven, right? I will say that the Bay Area has donated more to Measure J than folks in LA have. And so just urging folks to donate, no matter if it's $1 to $5, like, anything counts, because it gets us more towards the goal of actually putting ads on TV. Right now, you know, we have a fundraising goal of $1.5 million. That sounds like a lot, especially because it's funded by our folks, but, you know, every dollar counts. And so social media plug-in, donating, and then also phone banking. There are paid phone banking opportunities. Felicia, you can give folks my email if they're interested. I'll connect them. But there's also volunteer phone banks. We're having phone banks every single day. And our goal is to make 1 million calls. So anything you can do to help us get to 1 million calls, we need that. And I just want to talk about the urgency, if I could, for a second. Like, we are, you know, voter registration ends October 19th, right? So folks have to be registered by then. If you have your ballot, vote early, vote now. The ballot is very long. One thing you have to know about measures is that we do have text banks, yes. So if you want to do text banks, we all have that. But to get to the ballot, like, local measures are all the way at the bottom or at the end of the book. Oftentimes, the presidents are always at the first thing, right? And people just vote for that, and they don't sometimes vote all the way through the ballot. But what you have to understand is that you are more impacted by local electeds, by local measures, and faster than anything that happens at the federal level. And so it's critical that you vote all the way down the ballot, all the way to the local measures, and even to the local representatives, because the local representatives are the ones who decide what are the COVID-19 responses. They're the ones who decide where your tax dollars go to. And so if you're not choosing or investing and picking who that person is, like, you're really missing out on your political power. And but yeah, that's a long-winded answer to your question.
So that was a perfect answer. It covered a lot of ground. Now, when we talk about policies, because like you said, I mean, I believe in my heart of hearts that it's going to win, and we're going to have that victorious moment together. But what does it look like afterwards? What does that work look like? We've already seen how our broken institutions operate. And although this is innovative and has so much amazing potential, what's next? Like, what are we all going to have to continue to do? What does that look like?
That's a great question. Thank you. And so we're already planning for that, right? In my heart, I believe we're going to win. I believe the people want this, they need this, so they are going to vote for it. And so we're planning for that already. We have what's called the policy working group within our steering committee of over 25 organizations that are working from housing stuff, housing crisis, all the way to like abolitionist policies and everybody in between. So it's a very holistic group of people figuring out how we move forward. We're working a couple of things. One, we're working with the Board of Supervisors, particularly Sheila Kuehl's office, to draft a motion that'll kind of outline what the participatory budget model will look like, right? One of the things in Measure J line in there is it says that there has to be an inclusive and transparent implementation process. And we put this very clearly in there because, you know, our coalition has been working on budget advocacy at the county level for years. And I can tell you that it always happens in backdoor rooms. Like there isn't enough information for everybody to be a budget expert. I feel like if you can learn budgets or even have some access, like, it's a privileged position to be in. And so Measure J allows for community advocates, for labor, and others to be at the table to decide how are we going to allocate these $500 million up to $1 billion, right? What do we need to prioritize in these two big buckets, which is community investment and alternatives to incarceration? And so that looks like going through the budget process, but being a part of that. And the motion will describe how we do that, how we prioritize these funds, what working groups will be created, but it's something we're investing a lot of time in because, we don't want to play catch up.
That's so refreshing for me to hear that folks are thinking downstream to support. As a formerly incarcerated person who's had a lot of privilege, like, I often tell people, like, man, when I got here, there was only two choices for somebody like me. I could either go live in Susan Burton's house, and that was in the early 2000s, and it's not the gems that they are today, or I could live in Sherman Oaks and a racist, sober, the owners of a racist, sober living. You know what I chose, but it also afforded me so many opportunities that created pathways for me, like, pathways to be able to participate, pathways for industry to be able to also benefit and to reap those benefits simultaneously, and have that kind of symbiotic relationship that I think really is helping steer part of this conversation. Like, I got to work in the entertainment industry when I first came home, and it was interesting to say the least, but I mean, I know that as architects of story with that space in particular, how is the entertainment industry? I mean, you said San Francisco has put more dough into helping us down here. What does it look like on that front?
I mean, it's been looking pretty good so far. It's one thing I can talk positively about. We've been working with Build Power, an organization, a nonprofit founded by Kendrick Sampson, who I'm sure you all know is an amazing actor, who's working with folks like Sophia Bush, Amy Schumer, Diane Guerrero, and Allison Pilson, a bunch of folks who are actors and have platforms. To work with us. My colleague and my co-chair, Isaac Bryan, on the Measure J campaign, he's done, you know, Instagram lives with all these folks. I might have one next week with Diane Guerrera. And so they've been really throwing down for this measure, and it's through Build Power and that connection. But we're trying to reach the athletes, right? You know, like LeBron James, the Lakers, they just won, and we've been trying to get a hold of him. Like, please just say Measure J like once. Like, I mean, we're definitely trying, because if what it feels like, these folks are getting more of a social conscious and are advocating more for social injustice. So, you know, it's now about walking the walk. So that's who we're trying to reach out to. But if y'all have any connections, let us know. They've been supported so far.
What can just everyday people, like the folks who are tuning in right now, who, I mean, I already voted. My mom handed me over her ballot because we had a long conversation a couple of months ago about the future. So she willingly handed it over and said, you know, Mija, talk to me a little bit about this. And we had a conversation. So this house is already voted in. But what can other folks, and what can I do independent of dropping some change in the bucket? What are some things that we can continue to do to support?
I think the commitment, at least, of posting on Measure J just once, and committing to texting, like really texting the link of the Measure J website to like 25 people, you know, or maybe what I found is super easy is on Instagram, DMing Measure J post to like 100 of my friends. Like, these things seem like, I don't know if they sound corny or not, but it's literally the way that we're gonna tap as many people as possible, right? Like, there's several, like a dozen people on this call, right? If a dozen people DM'd 100 people, we're reaching 1,200 potential voters, right? So that's, when you look at the numbers, just about telling as many people as possible through these everyday things. I'm glad that, you know, you give a perfect example of like your mom and you talking about the ballot. And as folks who, you know, who have maybe more conservative folks in their household, it's about doing that, right? Like having that conversation, and don't, you know, make a night out of it. Vote with your family. Don't let your conservative loved ones vote by themselves, and really go through that ballot and have conversations. It's challenging. I mean, if not, nothing's gonna change. And we, you know, before the status quo before COVID-19, like a lot of folks were just surviving, right? Some folks are thriving, but not many. And so we can't go back to pre-COVID. Like, we really need to push for a place where we can all really thrive. So that's going to require us to push our family members to vote in the right ways.
No, 100%. I mean, I've had a lot of years of practice with my mom and having these types of conversations about social issues. I always encourage people, like, we have to have those conversations. Like, they're uncomfortable. I mean, my family already knows I have the chancla out. They already know, like, come on, guys, like, come on, we're better, you know, to have to remind, especially the Latinx community, like, hey, we're better than that. I don't want to hear that. I'm honest. So, and everybody knows this. I'm like, to tell a grown up who's my elder, like, hey, nobody wants to hear that shit come out of your mouth. And then just look at you with this blank stare and like, no, I'm serious. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Like, if I would have said mierda, you would have understood too. So like, just don't, let's have a bigger conversation about how we're going to decolonize how you're thinking, and decolonize the way that you were then acting. And I think a lot of us, I know that I feel like you and I had this conversation. I know Diana and I talk about it often, about like pushing and what does that look like to especially push our community, who has this unique opportunity with limited privilege, you know, limited privilege, but still privilege all the same, to be able to really stand united. One question that I wanted to ask, because I've been asking a lot of folks just in my everyday conversation, you know, you're fighting, you're in battle mode every day. What do you do for self-care for yourself?
Excuse me. You know, that's been something I'm working on. I know that you and I have had conversations about this, and you know, this work is not easy, and I'm having to learn more and more that if I want to be in the long run, like, I gotta take care of myself. And so one thing is melatonin. Melatonin is my friend. I will take that. It's just like to really like relax my brain, right? Sometimes I feel like I'm dreaming about work. And so just to really unplug, I think that's really important. Me and my brother just bought a treadmill. You know, it's been really hard to get out and walk with all the smoke, you know, people being immune compromised. Like, so it's okay, let's invest in a treadmill and do it. So that's, and also drinking more water, right? Those are the things that I'm trying to intentionally invest in: sleep, exercise, and water. Because this work is already heavy and we got to be in it for the long haul, right?
Definitely, definitely. Melatonin, I have this CBD and melatonin that I take, and I can't take it all the time because I get those really, really deep sleep.
Ooh.
Where I don't, you know, where I wake up and I'm still like a little hungover, and I'm just like, wow, I didn't even smoke anything last night. What is, you know, I just like, no cotton mouth or anything, but just like, oh my goodness, like these deep sleep. But about twice a week, just to like really allow my body to get that deep sleep. I'm excited for you. The treadmill is a game changer. We, when this happened, my wife and I invested in one too, mainly because I didn't like, I couldn't walk around with a mask on and try to just walk around. Like it made me uncomfortable, like everything. It gave me a lot of feels. But when we got that, it's a place where I'll cry. Like surprisingly enough, like I'm not crying because I'm getting like this hardcore workout, but just like the endorphins and like the release of like, you know, what does it look like for me? It's just like, what does it look like to really treat our people with the dignity and respect that they deserve for their humanity, just because they exist? And I'll have these moments where I'm just like 5 minutes. My wife's like, are you okay? So I hope you get to have a lot of those freeing moments on that treadmill when the endorphins and everything is going. And water's good. We're just little plants, guys, anyway, so water's always good. What's next for you?
What's next?
You like big mountains, so I know, I'm just always curious, like what's next for you? You pick the biggest mountain and say, I'm going there, and then you go there and then you tackle it. So what's the next big mountain that you're looking at?
Taking a vacation, like a real vacation, like unplugging, I think is the next mountain, is what I want to do in December. But you know, it's not, I wish it was just these moments, right? I wish it was like November 3rd, boom, we're done. But it's like, okay, now the real work begins, right? Like, how are we going to stay accountable to making sure those dollars move? How are we going to decarcerate the largest jail system in the world? How are we going to make sure those, you know, our people get the support they need? And so that's all the after, right? And though that's really where, like, folks don't really talk about implementation, but that's the sexy work. That's really where you hold these systems accountable, where you're at the opposite side of the bureaucracy, like pushing for our people and really getting the things that we fought for. Like that's what's next, making sure that there's follow through, because we need that. I wish it was.
You're going to hold their feet to the fire. I love it. I love it. Let me know when you need some help calling some folks out and showing up in that capacity, because that's one of my favorite things to do. You mentioned some other measures, just because I know you've got a busy day and I know we can talk forever, but I just want to be cognizant and respectful of your time. And after this, we'll ask if anybody has any additional questions. But what are some other important measures and propositions that folks should really be paying attention to, that really tie into this broader scope, this bigger, wider lens that we're talking about regarding healing, that most folks aren't paying attention to as much as Measure J, but is equally as important because they feed into ending some of these carceral systems we have in place?
Okay, I'm gonna go through a list real quick. So Prop 16, it bans affirmative action as a tool to fight discrimination. This is super important. It's one of the only reasons why Black, Brown, Indigenous, LGBTQ folks have been able to access leadership roles and jobs and supportive services. So we gotta vote yes on Prop 16. There's Prop 20. Prop 20 is a no for me. It would roll back a lot of criminal justice reform policies that we passed, such as making possession of a substance, from a felony to a misdemeanor. They would roll that back. And also, if you committed a misdemeanor act, like, they can take your DNA. Like, that shit's wild for me. Like, I don't want the government to have my DNA, and just if it's, and they decide what is a misdemeanor offense, right? And if you get arrested for a misdemeanor, you could still get later charged with even just an infraction. But the fact is, you got arrested and charged with a misdemeanor so they can collect your DNA. So it's a hell no on Prop 20 for me. There is yes on Measure J, which we talked about. And then there's also yes on Prop 17 for me. But I believe we have to be nonpartisan, maybe. Well, maybe I'm just taking my hat off. And then this is Eunisses as an individual person at this moment. And the last several minutes before that. Want to make that clear. Because of lobbying restrictions, I have to be clear, sorry. And so there's Prop 17. That would give people on parole the opportunity to vote. So people in our LA County jails, they can vote already, even if they haven't been released. So it just doesn't make sense why people on parole couldn't vote. Prop 17 would give them that opportunity. I would remove that disenfranchisement. Also, Prop 25. Prop 25 is very tricky. It says that it would end cash money bail and replace it with the system that expands probation, expands judges' power, and uses a racially biased risk assessment tool to determine your risk. That's a no. It replaces a bad system of cash money bail with an even worse system of expanded carceral settings, right? And just people say, well, why are you supporting this? The bail industry is supporting this. Well, we're supporting this. Our coalition is supporting it as people who have had to pay bail to get their loved ones out. People have had to, have had bail on themselves. And so our analysis comes from those experiences. And also we've developed a separate platform called Preserving the Presumption of Innocence, which is a pre-trial platform that we will pass and will push, after this Prop 25 mess is over, right? There's an alternate option. It doesn't have to be cash bail, and it doesn't have to be risk assessments. It could be actual preserving the presumption of innocence for folks, and they shouldn't be incarcerated. So that's the ones that I would like to uplift. One of the ballot guides that I'm using, that I'm very in support of for the props, is the Black Lives Matter voter guide. Also, another really good voter guide is Bend the Arc. Their voter guide is phenomenal. Knock LA also have a phenomenal voter guide. And Justice LA, the coalition, also has an amazing voter guide. So check those out. You don't have to do a lot of research. They have everything lined up in really nice infographics.
I love voter parties too, even though I've already voted. Like, this is the first year that I haven't done a voter party. Well, we did a little one in my house when my mom came and sat next to me. We had a joyous voter party, but are there any parting words that you have for us? Anything you want to share with us on Indigenous Peoples Day? Yeah,
there's one thing. In LA, the first official building that was built was a jail. And it was built to incarcerate the indigenous folks that were living on this land, right? And so then this comes from a book called The City of Inmates by Dr. Kelly Lado Hernandez from UCLA. It's a phenomenal book, y'all should read it, but it really talks about and goes through the journey of how LA became one of the carceral focus points in the entire country. There are many measures on the ballot this year and many candidates on the ballot that could either reinforce us moving forward and building out a bigger carceral system, or they could really be the folks who are supporting stopping our reliance on this carceral system. And, LA County, the 2nd district race, La Defensa has endorsed Holly Mitchell, phenomenal candidate. If she gets in there, LA County will transform. I have no doubts. The district attorney race, La Defensa hasn't endorsed anybody because a cop is a cop, but Holly Mitchell has put only Black and brown people to death under her tenure through the death penalty. Her office continues to incarcerate people for things such as Jackie Lacey. Who did I say?
You said Holly again.
Oh, so sorry. No, not Holly. Holly's amazing. DA Lacey, under her tenure, all the folks who have been sent to death, have been Black and brown. All the folk, like some of the top charges under Jackie Lacey's reign that have led people to incarceration have been driving with a suspended license or no license, simple drug possession, receiving stolen property. Like these are the top like offenses that are driven by poverty, by mental health needs, and they're the ones that are being prosecuted the highest under her. So that race is incredibly important. The DA race, district attorney, and just vote all the way down the ballot. Local races matter, more important than anything I think at the federal level right now. So that's all I got.
Well, always, I appreciate you so much. Your vision is coming to fruition. I'm super excited and grateful to see you blossom, not just as an organizer, but truly as a leader who looks at this world via an intersectional lens and who loves all of their siblings. I'm super grateful for you, thankful. I'm super, just on a personal note, I'm super thankful to see and be able to be a part of all of this. Thank you for everybody who came in. Does anybody else have any questions before we leave? It's 11:11.
Make a wish.
There was a question in the chat from Lauren, who said, do you ever have text banking?
Yes, we do. Every day there's text banking happening. If you want to get plugged in, you can email me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. Have a beautiful rest of the day.
Thank you, Felicia, and the Social Impact Center for giving me time and opportunity to speak to you all. I love you very much. Thank you for all the support, and we're going to do this. Thank you. Thanks for letting me talk about it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good one, guys.
Bye.